Good morning and welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Well, I am rip-roaring ready to go today because, I talked to you yesterday. I said the thinking of the Democrat Party, the Democrat Party, the cult of the godless, it's more cult-like. It's not rational. It's not normal. It's not within the bounds of rational thinking. It really is cult-like because it denies reality. It denies facts. It denies truth and demands that everyone buy into it. Everyone accept this. This is good. And you don't accept it, oh, there's something wrong with you. I said, well, that's the way cults are. You're the unenlightened. You haven't gotten to the point of nirvana that we've arrived at, and so you just don't get it. That's too bad, Susan. We're sorry for you, but and normal people are looking at this and saying, "You're nuts. You've lost your mind. What is wrong with you?" Well, yesterday, this guy, he's worth $10 billion. He's an entrepreneur. I didn't really know of him, paying any attention to him. Alex Karp, worth $10 billion. He's the CEO of Palantir, which apparently is a high-tech company, I guess, actually said and has been saying now that the colleges, the universities, the Democrat Party, now this is not, again, this is not a preacher, this is not a commentator, this is an entrepreneur, and by the way, a guy who says, I've been a Democrat. Now, I don't know whether he can remain a Democrat given what he's saying. He said, but it's been taken over, quote, by a pagan religion. That's what Alex Karp says, that the Democrat Party, our colleges, our universities, they've been taken over by a pagan religion. Now, I don't know where he stands spiritually, but clearly he knows that this behavior, this thought process that they're going through is completely irrational. It is completely disconnected from reality. So he calls it a pagan religion, where people are doing things that civilized people look at and say, well, that's crazy. But for the people who are doing it, the people who are engaged in the cult, they think this is perfectly rational behavior. And we've got to do something about all these crazy people who don't see that. I went back and I thought about that. I said, well, actually, maybe I'm not the only one saying this. And I went back and looked and realized that in the past, there have been others who have been suggesting exactly the same thing. Tommy Tuberville recently, and this is more recent, but I went back and saw that even in the past there have been some others. But Tommy Tuberville says the Democrat Party is the equivalent of a satanic cult. Senator Tommy Tuberville. Now, I agree with him entirely. I don't believe, though, that they are consciously worshiping Satan, because I don't think they really believe that probably Satan exists, which is, another way in which they're terribly misinformed, misguided, because that's the greatest thing. Satan just loves it when people don't believe he exists, because then he can do his thing, manipulate people, and do all kinds of crazy stuff, and they don't realize that there is a demonic force behind the evil that we're seeing emerging, and he's just laughing and enjoying every bit of it, because this is his stock in trade. Lies and deception. They say the greatest lie Satan never sold to people is that he doesn't exist, that he's not real. But at any rate, I don't know, to what extent Tommy Tuberville understands this, that as I, as a Bible-believing Christian, understand it. Jesus certainly made clear that Satan was real. For people who say, well, I respect Jesus. Well, Jesus made clear that Satan was real. He said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Jesus was there when he was cast out. But, so it's not just Bishop E.W. Jackson saying this. There are others saying it. In fact, I found something, I don't even think I actually recorded this, but I found something going back a ways in which there were some other people essentially saying Democrats have become a cult. The left has become a cult. I'm just glad, I wish it could be amplified because, again, that gives you an entirely different approach. You realize these people need deprogramming. And it also means you got to keep children away from them because cults tend to swallow up children because they know that children are more impressionable and more easily brought into the thinking of the cult. So thinking about things from this perspective helps us to understand how we have to deal with these people. Now, of course, they're trying to, as I've said before, convince everybody that no, it's people who are following Donald Trump who are the cult. But again, you just can't, that won't sell. Oh, Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan is another one who said, quote, now this goes back, I think to 2021. She says, I do believe Democrats, most especially, are in a deep cult. Pastor Jack Hibbs called Democrats a death cult. And by the way, again, Rose McGowan is a person who's got a background as a Democrat. And she's saying this. I do believe Democrats, this was in April 2021, she said, I do believe Democrats most especially are in a deep cult. Oh, that's right, because Rose McGowan came out of what was it called? The Children of God cult. And she was in a cult. She was in a cult. And she's saying, I do believe Democrats are in a deep cult. So folks, look, I'm not rejoicing in this. I'm not celebrating it because I don't want any part of our country to be engaged in a demonic cult. But I'm glad that there are others who see this, who see that this is not just a political issue we're dealing with. It is a spiritual issue. And the Democrats are really caught up in the spider web of Satan, and they don't even know it. Now here's a perfect example of this irrational thinking, and this has just happened. In fact, I pointed this out yesterday, but I want to come back and talk about it in a little more depth. This guy, I didn't have his name yesterday because the story was just breaking, but Richard Kenneth Cox. He is a guy who up in Fairfax County showed up in several girls' locker rooms, public school locker rooms, for swimming activities, lessons, what have you. This was sort of after school stuff. This wasn't during school because he's a grown man. He shows up. He looks every bit like a man, okay? But he shows up saying he's a woman. So their policies in Fairfax County say, well, if you identify as a woman, you can use the women's facilities. He goes into girls' locker rooms where young kids are being brought by their mothers. And mothers, one of them is speaking out now. Mothers walk into the locker room. Here is a man in full frontal nudity in front of their young girls. When they complain, they're told that, well, he's a woman. Now, you said, yeah, he looks like a man. He's got all the physiology of a man, if you get my meaning. But he says he's a woman, and therefore he's allowed to use the female facilities in which young girls are being brought. And when the mothers say there's a guy naked in the girls' locker room, they say, oh, no, he's a woman. You see, that is a complete denial of reality. So look, they take this to this George Soros prosecutor up that way. In my beloved Commonwealth of Virginia, oh, Lord, help us with these. Help us. I hope Donald Trump and Elon Musk so drain the swamp that all of these people just head for the high hills. Go back to New York, or go live in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is it can be a sanctuary city for all of the refugees from the demonic cult of Democrat leftist thinking. Just go up there and live, and hang around with all the guys with beards who think they're women, whatever. But just get out of Virginia. Please get out of Virginia, so we can have this state reflect the values of most of the people in Virginia who really care about this Commonwealth. But the George Soros prosecutor says, well, he's done nothing wrong. He's a woman. Come to find out, folks. And by the way, this is the other thing, okay? He says he's a woman. That's all we need to know. Yeah, but you got young girls going in here with this guy. Come to find out, this guy has a record going back to 1995 as a sex offender who has exposed himself and committed a variety of sexual assaults against women and exposed himself to girls. So he's kind of a pedophile. He likes exposing himself to young girls. He has a record going back to 1995. I looked up his record. He spent about 19 years in prison. And they've got this guy. And by the way, he did this in at least 2 schools, maybe as many as 4, where he just shows up during these swim times and goes into the locker room and gets undressed and gets to expose himself to for young girls legally. Because he's not exposing himself, he's a woman. You see, I mean, this is like a person, people who, by the way, who then criticize the parents. And it's this here again. It's the cult. They get up on their superior high horse. Well, you don't understand. You're not at our level of sophistication yet. You don't understand. He's a woman. Oh my good folks. Woo. Lawrence Jones said something that I'll be amazed if he doesn't get some blowback on it. He said, but this is going to get somebody hurt. Now imagine a father hearing that some guy is in his daughter's locker room. She goes in there and sees some guy exposing himself. And when his wife comes out and tells him, and he goes to the administration, they say, oh, no, he's a woman. And he says, women don't have what he's got. And they say, well, that doesn't matter because he identifies. Now, this guy is in there doing who knows what in front of young girls. And they said, one mother said that when people realized he was in there, it created a whole sort of panic of women looking for someplace else to take their daughters. But that doesn't matter to the administration because we understand that, because these are the unenlightened, you see. These are the podunks who don't really get it. They haven't arrived at this level of revelation where they can see him for who he really is. I know, forgive me. See her for who she really is. I refuse to call this guy her. The guy did 19 years in prison for a variety of sexual offenses. He did one 7-year stretch. That wasn't for exposing himself, obviously, because you don't get 7 years for that. This guy is a dangerous sex offender. And you got these knucklehead cult members who somehow think that having him expose himself to young girls, that his satisfaction is something that they are supposed to accept, because this is the right and decent and moral thing to do. Well, according to your cult, it is. And get this, folks. Look, you don't need to be a genius to understand that this guy has figured out all I have to do is say I'm a woman, and I can go into public places, public spaces, where girls will be, and expose myself, and it is perfectly legal for me to do so. All I got to do is say I'm a woman. And once I say that, carte blanche. You know, again, this stuff is so egregious and so sick and so disgusting, but let's face it, that's where the expression came from, drinking the Kool-Aid. Because while some people were forced, there were actually people with Jim Jones down in Guyana who gave their children poison because their master told them that this was a great thing. This was a revolutionary act. This was revolutionary suicide. Kill your children, kill yourself. This is going to be the greatest thing you ever did. And people went along with it. Not all of them. Some of them tried to escape, and some of them were forced by gunpoint. But some of them went happily into that darkness because they've been taught that that Jim Jones was in effect God, and he knew better than we do. And if Jim Jones says kill your child, well, just get busy with it. I mean, what's the difference if these knucklehead, crazy, Looney Tune Democrats, Democrats say, just bring your daughter in and let her be exposed to this guy, because he's not a guy, he's a woman, and just explain to her that he's a woman. On to the next issue. No big deal. I'll tell you, in situations like that, you just want to think that there was somebody who had a gun who would have put a bullet to Jim Jones' head and blown his brains out and said to the rest, if you try to kill anybody else, you have to go through me. And you might get me, but I'm going to take down as many of you as I can. And said to the people, now, get out of here. Let's march out of here like we got good sense. I'm not suggesting violence in this case. I'm just saying that it just goes, the fact that nobody did that just goes to show what happens when people become so brainwashed that they cannot see reality anymore. They can't see it. So I'm not the only one who understands this is a cult that we're dealing with. And it's a cult that the American people are going to have to put down. Again, not violently. I'm not suggesting that in any way. I was using the Jim Jones example because obviously he got violent and ended up forcing people to drink this poison. And that's one of those situations where violence is just definitely justified because it's self-defense. And I think if somebody blown his brains out, they would have been hailed a hero, saved the lives of a bunch of people, but nobody did. They just submitted. Well, look, I don't know where this is going to go. They've finally got this guy in custody now, okay? Finally got him in custody now. But to me, there is no excuse. He's been charged with indecent exposure, indecent liberties with children, as a sex offender on school or daycare property. He's not allowed to be on school or daycare property, but do you think they would bother to take a look and say, well, you know what? Let's make sure this guy is not using this as a ruse. Oh, no, He's clearly a member of the cult too, so he's enlightened like we are. So clearly, we don't have any questions. Just let him go right on and disrobe and in front of all the girls, and we'll enlighten them too. He's also been accused of identity theft. And you look at a picture of the guy, Richard Kenneth Cox. Isn't he supposed to have a female name? If he's supposed to be a woman? Folks, this stuff is just, and you know, as I've said many times before, now that's what's happening in Fairfax County, to my everlasting chagrin, in my home state of Virginia. But look, make no mistake about it. This is what the Democrats want for America. This is the way they want America to operate. This is the way they want us to be. They want us to be a one gigantic American cult, all living by their cult rules, all living in denial of reality the way they're living in denial of reality. Well, let's come back to this issue of the left going crazy over Donald Trump's exposing all of this fraud and waste and abuse that is going on right now in our government, that has been going on under the Biden administration. Once again, you know, there's no such thing as a cult with financial integrity. There's no such thing. Because the whole purpose of the cult is to give power and control, which includes the money, over the people in the cult by those who run the cult. That's the whole point. So when you look at it from that perspective, it shouldn't surprise us that you see billions of dollars, taxpayer money, going out the door for some of the most ridiculous things imaginable. Have you heard about the money that is being spent, was being spent? $241 million spent on transgender surgeries and treatments, drug treatments for animals. By the way, approved by none other than the infamous Anthony Fauci. So I've said the man ought to be arrested for crimes against humanity. Now it looks like he ought to be arrested for crimes against animals as well. $241 million spent on operating on animals to try to transition them to another gender. I'm sure the animals came and told them that they were born in the wrong body. And giving them all kinds of drugs and doing all kinds of weird experiments on them. I mean, folks, this is animal cruelty on steroids. I mean, this is utterly ridiculous. And by the way, the person testifying about this, Justin Goodman, who's the Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Public Policy at White Coast Waste Project, said that this was the floor. He said this was just the beginning. In other words, that's only what they've discovered. They think there's a lot more. So they were using mice, rats, monkeys, surgically mutilating them, giving them hormone therapies to see if they could make them mimic male or female behaviors, whatever that means in an animal, no, mind you. And then they look at the biological, physiological, and psychological effects of the attempt to transition them. Folks, this stuff is just, I mean, I've called it Frankenstein monster stuff. It really is. It really, by the way, you know, this behavior You know who else engages in behavior like this? And I don't think I'm stretching the point here, but you know who else engages in behavior like psychopaths who love cruelty to animals as the lead up to cruelty to human beings. Well, isn't that true? I mean, all the literature says that one of the things you look for in a budding psychopath who might become a serial killer is if that person enjoys mutilation of animals, watch out. You've got these little scientific psychopaths here who are doing all these insane things to animals, and then what? They want to graduate to do children. As far as I'm concerned, they should be locked up in the same jail as these psychopaths, because this stuff is utterly ridiculous. And again, you see, you and I, who would think this to be absolutely outrageous, we are the unenlightened, see. The cult sees it, we don't. 241 million hard-earned taxpayer dollars being used for this kind of monstrous behavior. And by the way, and they want to accuse Donald Trump of being some kind of out-of-control dictator? I mean, Hitler had his Mengele, and that's what he did. He experimented on animals and on human beings because he didn't really need animals, because he could do whatever he wanted to do with human beings with Hitler's approval. Excuse me, folks. And this is what they do with your taxpayer dollars and mine? Because look, folks, to me, it takes a sick mind to dream this stuff up. It really does. I mean, it takes a sick mind to dream this stuff up, and then to take taxpayer dollars and actually use it to persecute these animals. See, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't find out they're using dogs and cats as well. We haven't heard that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. Because I think these people who engage in this kind of stuff, to me, are sadists. They get off. They enjoy harming living creatures. And if they'll do it like that, to do those kinds of things to human beings, to animals, you better believe they're willing to do those kinds of things to human beings. And by the way, speaking of all of this gender insanity and rebellion, I mentioned when he was killed, this Border Patrol officer who sadly was killed. I don't think anybody knew the full circumstances initially, but he pulled over, did a traffic stop, pulled over some people, ended up getting killed. I'll find his name here in a second. But it turns out that the people who killed him are part of a transgender cult. They call themselves the Zizians. Yeah, that was Border Patrol agent David Maland. They call themselves the Zizians. And on January 20th, at a traffic stop, they kill Maland about 20 miles from the Canadian border. But they're apparently dedicated to, I guess, killing people who, in one way or another, maybe they're dedicated to killing anybody who's not one of them. There it is, the cult. But they're linked to multiple brutal homicides. They've been traveling around the country killing people. It is a transgender cult. And again, this guy we just had arrested, thank God he's finally arrested, up in Northern Virginia, who knows what he would have done if left to his own devices. Remember down just outside of Nashville? I mean, we had a mass shooting down there. And never really got the information about what was driving this person, because whatever manifesto, notes, whatever they had written was never released to the public. They didn't want us to see it. And I think it's because they are protecting the pathology of people who think this way. Look, folks, if you are profoundly confused about your own sexuality and gender, you are a man, you think you're a woman. You are a woman, you think you're a man. You are mentally ill. Something wrong with you. That doesn't mean you don't know the difference between right and wrong. But clearly you've decided to disregard the difference between right and wrong, at least in that instance, and follow whatever your feelings are. Well, what if your feelings are you need to kill people who are in your way? Well, you've already broken down one barrier. You've already transgressed one moral line. What's the difference? So their leader, I guess they must have more than one name. One's called the Trantifa terror member. Trantifa. I guess. And the thing is, you don't know whether to call these people him or her, because it's unclear whether they're guys trying to be women or women trying to be guys. It's just one great big ball of confusion. But apparently, I guess the leader's name is Zajko or something. He's supposed to be, get this, trans non-binary. Again, what does that even mean? He's trans non-binary. In late 2020, this guy, it turns out her parents were shot execution style in their home, and he or she or whatever he is, I don't know, was the sole heir after the grandmother died shortly thereafter. This is a transgender cult, the Zizians, or the Trantifas. Trantifas, I guess, is another name they call themselves. Their leader's name is Ziz, Jack Andrea Ziz Lesotho. Now, again, I don't know whether he's Jack trying to be Andrea or Andrea trying to be Zach. But they killed this police officer, apparently killed the parents of this guy, I guess, or whatever it is. And it's a whole group of people just dedicated to killing people. And I guess the point is to kill people who are not transgenders, I guess. I mean, folks, this stuff, yeah, it's just beyond the pale. It really is. It's beyond the pale. And I really believe that while I'm not suggesting that every gender rebellious person is by definition, therefore, a murderer. I know better than that. But what I'm suggesting is that this is indicative of the depth of their pathology, because this is not one person. This is now a group. Trantifa. So I guess they consider themselves to be transgender terrorists. I guess they'd come to Virginia and free this guy that's just been locked up for exposing himself to young girls. I mean, what in the world, folks? Oh, and by the way, this guy, Ziz Lesotho, faked his death in 2022. I guess that's how he got away with it for a while. Fakes his death in 2022. And he's also a person of interest for multiple homicides in California and Pennsylvania. And killing others through his quote unquote trans comrades. So he's basically like a little trans, what's the guy's name? I'm thinking of the guy out in California who was, busy trying to start a race war. But he's fashioned himself as his own little trans murderous terrorist cult leader. Again, I'm not saying every person who suffers from gender dysphoria is like this, but I think this is indicative of the deep pathology that these people have within them. Once you decide that you are not the person you are, but you're somebody else, to me, all bets are off. I mean, who knows? Who knows what the next conclusion is? I mean, we've had several of these murderous attempts by these people who have gender issues. So something's going on here, right? There's some kind of violent impulse that is apparently prevalent in some of these folks. Well, I tell you what the real problem is. They would say the problem is you and me because we won't go along. No, the real problem is that they are at war with themselves. That's the real problem. They are at war with themselves. Their consciences can never be satisfied. They can never be at peace because they are in rebellion against the natural order of Almighty God and what God made them to be. They'll never be satisfied. You can cut them and chop them and dice them and slice them and inject them and do everything you want to do for them, but they'll never, ever, ever be satisfied. They cannot be because their problem is not physiological. It's not ultimately psychological. Their problem is ultimately spiritual. Now, I'm not saying that psychological treatment can't help, maybe, but what they really need is spiritual deliverance. That's what they really need. That's what everybody in a cult needs. Right? That's what they need. They don't need logic and facts, although, again, I am not in any way disdaining facts and logic because I believe very strongly in it. But I'm saying these people cannot be appealed to by facts and logic because their problem is not intellectual. Their problem is spiritual. And somehow you have to get through the calloused over heart that has led them into the darkness that envelops them so that they can finally open themselves up to see the light. Well, so whether you call them a cult or you call them a pagan religion or clearly they have got profound spiritual problems. And you and I've got to, we've got to pray for their deliverance because here again, we don't hate these people. Not that I wouldn't get angry if some man was exposing himself to my daughter or my granddaughter, or, you're getting on the fighting side of me. There's no question about that. But I'm not proposing violence. I'm proposing spiritual deliverance. But in the meantime, what I really want for our country is to leave these folks behind. Leave them behind in the sense that we overwhelmingly reject their philosophy, their ideology, their way of life, what they're proposing for the country. And by the way, man, let me take a moment in the last 5 minutes I've got here to say, we just sent out a letter yesterday. If you didn't get it, go to our website. It should be posted on the website. If it's not, it will be shortly. Proposing a constitutional amendment to define gender as only two, male and female. In fact, let me take a moment. I didn't plan to do this, but let me take a moment to try to see if I can find the letter. So that I think this is it. Yep, this is it. You know what? I'm not going to read you the entire constitutional amendment because it's too long. It's got 4 sections. This is the most complex one we're proposing because I think it's got to be a little bit more complex to make sure we cover all the bases. So I'll read you section 1. This is where I think we've got to go. I don't think President Trump's executive order is going to get it. I don't think he's going to cut it, and I don't think the Supreme Court is going to affirm what he's trying to do, because in my view, they had the opportunity to do that in Bostock and they didn't take it. Bostock in 2020, they defined sex in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VII, as including sexual orientation and gender identity. I think that that's where the court is going. It was Gorsuch and Roberts siding with the 4 liberals. So you had a 6-3 decision. Now that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. So I don't think Donald Trump's going to win before the Supreme Court on this issue. I think we got to have a constitutional amendment. Here's the first section, and you can read the entire constitutional amendment by going to our website, standamerica.us. But it says, for purposes of this Constitution, the laws of the United States and the District of Columbia, and the laws of any territory governed by the laws of the United States, all references to sex or gender shall mean and only be defined as a person born as a biological and genetic male or a biological and genetic female, or synonymously a man or a woman. These 2 categories are hereinafter to be known as natural gender and shall be the only 2 genders recognized in law. Now, there you go. There you go. So, as I've said before, people can live however they want to live. Now, I say in my letter, if you didn't get the letter, go to our website, sign up, and get on our email list, and you'll get the letter. The letter is powerful. It's a tour de force. But I've said, look, we are a live and let live country, right? I'm a Christian. I have no interest, regard, respect for any of this garbage. But I'm not in favor of persecuting people because that's the way they want to live, or having our government arrest people. I'm not talking about what this guy was doing up here and appearing in these girls' bathrooms. Yeah, he should be arrested and locked up and thrown under the jail and throw away the key. I'm talking about people want to dress as a guy wants to dress as a woman. Hey. But what we don't want is for them to be able to force that on us, on our children's schools, on our workplaces, in our wherever. We just don't. We want people to be free. If some employer says, you know what, I have no problem with it. I want everybody in my store to be a drag queen. I know not to ever shop there, but that's their business. What I don't want is for drag queens that work in the store to say, we want drag queens to be out front where everybody can see us. And if you don't do that, you're discriminating against us because you put quote unquote cisgender people out there. No. I want the employer to be able to say, listen, you want to live that way, that's fine. It's fine with me. You can work here, no problem. I will choose where you work and how you work. Or to say, you know what, this is disruptive to the culture of my workplace and you can't work here. Go find someplace else. Go find someplace run by a drag queen. Go find someplace run by a gender rebellious person. They're out there. I mean, I don't know whether you all realize this, but the president of United Airlines is a drag queen. He brags about it. It says, it's helped him be a better CEO. Well, good. I don't want to fly your airline, though, because I'm not interested in trying to find pilots who are drag queens. I'm interested in knowing that the pilots who are flying these airplanes, as we've seen, particularly with this situation up in Toronto, I want pilots who are the very best that are available, who are top notch. Not the ones who know how to put on makeup and a wig and I mean, and see, the cult-like, I gotta go. The cult-like nature of this is what makes it so dangerous to the rest of us, because just as with these shootings and just as with this gender cult, when people are caught up obsessively with something that it makes them so self-absorbed and makes them feel like they're victims of the world, to me, it's not a big transition for them to say, you know what, we got to hurt other people to make them hurt like we hurt. And so our primary focus is not being the best surgeon, being the best pilot, being the best internist, being the best scientist, being the best mathematician. No, our focus is being known as and then fill in the blank. Drag queen, transgender, cisgender. I mean, not cisgender, because that's supposed to be normal. But you name it, non-binary, like I said, trans, non-binary, whatever. That's their primary goal. Not being a good judge, not being a good mechanic, but being this thing that they think they are, and making sure that the world acknowledges that. Well, I could care less. I'm not interested. And I don't want the distraction of, like somebody I know said to me, one guy came in one day with pink high heels on, talking about who'd been working as a man in this company for a long time, came in with pink high heels, and then complained because people were looking and laughing. Complained. They fired him. This was before all this other, before the Democrats went crazy about saying, no, we're going to force this on you whether you like it or not. I said, you couldn't fire him today without a lawsuit. But they fired him. Said, well, yeah, you can wear pink high heels, but you can't come to work wearing them because this is disruption. And instead of people working, they're busy looking at what is wrong with him. Of course, they would say, well, there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with you all, that you understand that, there are men who love pink high heels and they want to be able to wear them. Yeah, well, good. Let them wear them. But you can't wear them in my workplace, because we're not here to talk about you and your pink high heels. We're here to talk about the job that we have to do here, fulfilling the mission that we have here, meeting the needs of our customers here. And you becoming a distraction doesn't help that. It detracts from that. And it's abnormal, and it's crazy, and it's stupid, and we're not going to be a part of it. This constitutional amendment says you don't have to be. See, because the way they're going right now, the Supreme Court and the legacy of the Biden administration and the Democrats in general, they want to force this stuff on you and on your children, as we've just seen up here in Northern Virginia. And we're going to put a stop to it. Me and you and President Trump are going to put a stop to it. Praise God. So, listen, God bless each and every one of you. I'm not going to take time today, but tomorrow I'm going to pray about this stuff, because this really is a matter of prayer. We got to take authority over that demonic spirit and cast that thing out of our country and cast out of all these people. Of course, you can't cast a demon out of somebody who wants the demon in them, but we can certainly make it harder for these demons to relax and be comfortable in our beloved country. Let's turn up the spiritual heat on them so hot that it burns them every time they have to get around us. It just burns them. Take the sword of the Spirit and just stick them with it. Just cut them up with the word of God and make them run, because that's what the Bible says. Resist the devil and he'll flee. God bless everybody. That's it. I've got to go. Don't forget, Stand Awards dinner, May the 16th. Go to our website, standamerica.us. If there's nothing on there yet, there will be in the next day or so. Please put it on your calendar, save the date, come on out and be a part of it. Sponsor for us, help us out with our largest fundraiser of the year, Stand Awards dinner at Cornerstone Chapel on May the 16th, Friday, May the 16th at 7 p.m. Looking forward to seeing you there. In the meantime, stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.